Okay, it looks like we're live. Okay, great. So welcome anybody who's joining to this event between InsideUni and the Oxford Astrophoria Foundation Year. We'll get started in a couple of minutes. Feel free to sit down, grab a drink, and we'll just wait for a few more participants to join, and then we'll get started with the event. Okay. It's been a couple of minutes since we started. So yeah, welcome to this live Q&A event. It's a collaboration between InsideUni and the Oxford Astrophoria Foundation Year, which is a really exciting new foundation year programme at the University of Oxford. To introduce myself, hello, I'm Ellie. I'm the chair of this Q&A. I work at InsideUni, which is a free student-run access project aiming to share reliable and relatable student advice about applying to Oxford and Cambridge. So this is our Q&A event. I'll just let our participants introduce themselves. So if we start with the staff from the Oxford Astrophoria Foundation Year.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Jo Begbie and I am the Foundation Year Coordinator, which means that I have this leadership role of bringing together the whole programme and everything involved with it.
Hi, I'm Tom. I'm the Communications and Outreach Officer for the Astrophoria Foundation Year.
And now the student participants. Shall we start with Sabia?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm Sabia, you can call me Sabs. I done the foundation year 2 years ago and I studied law and I'm now on my second year of law undergraduate at LMH.
Yeah, I'm Rasai. I did PPE, Politics, Philosophy and Economics on the foundation year in 2019. And I'm in my final year of uni now. So yeah.
Perfect.
Ellie, could we just interject and say that the students were on a sort of a pilot foundation year? So
Yes.
So it was running at Lady Margaret Hall, so one of the colleges in Oxford. We had 6 years worth of pilot programme. So when the students talk about having been a foundation year at Oxford, they were on that pilot programme. So the Astrophoria programme builds out of that. And I think you'll hear about that when Tom does his presentation.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so thanks to all of our participants and staff. Just to briefly go over the event format, hopefully it'll last about half an hour. It's just a chance for Oxford to introduce the foundation year, introduce some of the nitty-gritty and the details, and then we'll have some questions for our student participants and for the staff. Feel free to put your questions into the live chat. We do have a moderator helping to get those questions to us. So if you have anything that you'd like to ask, please feel free to shoot those down into the live chat there. So yeah, if we start with Tom.
Yeah, so hopefully the technology is working for us today. We'll give it a go. And Ellie, if you can just give me a thumbs up if it's working. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. So the Astrophoria Foundation, as Jo was just talking about, was inspired by a pilot programme which took place in one specific Oxford college called Lady Margaret Hall over the last 6 years. The majority of students who were on this pilot programme successfully completed their foundation year and then went on to undergraduate study at Oxford. It's a one-year foundation year programme for UK state school students with significant academic potential who've experienced some form of personal disadvantage or disruption during their education, which has resulted in them being unable to apply directly for an Oxford undergraduate degree programme. It is a fully funded course, so students do not have to pay course fees. They receive accommodation free of charge. They receive a non-repayable bursary to cover their living costs, and travel costs to and from university are covered too. So there's going to be up to 50 places offered across the programme and all the courses for 2023 entry. Students will also study at one of 10 participating colleges at Oxford. For this foundation year programme, students are assigned a college, and you don't apply for one, which is a little bit different to the undergraduate process. So here's a quick look at the courses that we have on offer. All our courses have lower grade entry requirements than the undergraduate courses at Oxford. We have a chemistry, engineering and materials science course, a humanities course, a law course and a PPE course. For our science subject pathways, the entry requirements are AAB at A level. And then for all our other courses, the entry requirements are BBB. It's worth noting that we accept a number of different other qualification types, including things like BTECs, Scottish Highers and access to HE diplomas. Full details of what we do accept is available on our course web pages online. One thing that's worth noting is that the academic entry requirements at Oxford work on grades, not on UCAS tariff points, which is a little bit different to some other universities. So for example, this would mean that if you got AAC at A level, that wouldn't meet BBB entry requirements because the C is below the B. That's a little bit different to some other universities and worth noticing. So now a quick look at sort of all the different undergraduate courses that the foundation year can lead on to. So when you apply for the foundation year, you actually pick an undergraduate course that you want to study at the outset with a foundation. So for example, you might want to apply for English with foundation year and then take part in the humanities foundation year course, or you might want to apply for chemistry with foundation year and take part in the, we've abbreviated it, Chems foundation year course. So any student who passes a foundation year course receives a Cert HE qualification. To progress onto undergraduate study at Oxford, you have to pass your foundation year at the required level. The students that do this get to enter their undergraduate course without reapplying through the competitive application process. If students do not pass the required level, or they just decide they want to take their undergraduate studies elsewhere, we will support them in making those applications to other universities. So just a quick look at some of the benefits of this course. So we believe that it will help you develop skills, self-belief and academic confidence, which will help you succeed at undergraduate level. Just like undergraduate students, you'll be a fully integrated member of an Oxford college and enjoy all the benefits that that entails. You'll have access to the university's world-class facilities and teaching. You'll have your own academic mentor who check in on your progress and help you with any difficulties that you're having with your studies. Like undergraduate students, you have full access to university clubs, societies, sport, support and welfare services. And as we just mentioned, if you pass your foundation year course at the required level, then you gain an automatic place on your chosen undergraduate degree without having to reapply through the competitive application process. And finally, we'll just take a quick look at how you would apply. So you need to apply via UCAS, and our deadline is the 25th of January, so a little bit different again from the Oxford undergraduate process. You can apply to 4 other universities at the same time as applying to a foundation year course with us. Something in addition that's part of our application process is that we ask you to fill out a questionnaire, which we've called the Snappy Title Foundation Year Additional Application Questionnaire. Here's where you kind of indicate which eligibility criteria you meet, and you also upload any evidence if that's required. This questionnaire is going to be sent out to all eligible applicants along with guidance on how to fill it out. So there should be lots of help available. Then shortlisted applicants will be invited to interviews in March. These are all going to be taking place online. And then successful applicants will receive offers via UCAS in April. So that is a very quick overview. There's lots more information on our website, but we're also here now to answer some more of your questions. And we've got students who participated in that pilot foundation year program as well to answer some of your questions. So hopefully I'm going to work out how to stop showing my screen now. And
perfect.
Cool.
Thanks so much, Tom. That was really insightful. Before we start the kind of questions that we've prepared for our student participants to kind of get into more of the details, we have had a few questions come through already. First question kind of relates to the presentation that you just gave, Tom. And a student asked, what happens if you get higher grades than the minimum entry requirement for that foundation year programme?
Yeah, so typically we advise students that have predicted or actual grades that meet the requirements for standard undergraduate entry that they apply for the undergraduate course. So that's part one of the answer.
Shall I do part two?
Part
two of the answer was, you know, let's say that you weren't predicted those higher grades. So if you were already predicted or thought you were going to get those grades, what Tom said is true, and we would encourage you to apply direct. If you've applied and you've been made an offer, and then the fantastic things happen that when you get your A-level results, you've done better than you expected, that would be fine. You could then, if you wanted to take, because remember you would apply to four other universities, so it may be that one of your other universities that you'd apply to, you wanted to go direct without doing a foundation year and use those really good grades to go elsewhere. But essentially we wouldn't then say, because you did better than expected, you can't come on the foundation year.
Perfect. Thanks for that answer. Just to follow up on this, I know that you touched on grade requirements, but just to follow through with a further question, a student's been predicted AAC, can they still get a place?
I think that would be highly unlikely, because remembering what Tom said, it is about having the BBB across the board. So if they're predicted AAC already, then they unfortunately wouldn't be meeting that minimum entry requirement, because it's not based on UCAS points.
I guess the one thing, potentially, if they were really set on it, they could wait to see what grades they actually achieved, and if that C was a B, then they could consider applying. And we do also accept resits as well. So,
Perfect. Thanks for the clarification. Cool. So I have my first question for our student participants, which is, was there any reason why you chose Oxford in particular? I don't know if you'd like to start, Sab?
Sure, I'll go first. I think when I was looking at universities, I really understood that I really did enjoy law, and I wanted to learn it at a really high academic level and go into like an incredible amount of detail. Whereas most universities I was looking at, they didn't go as much into detail, and they didn't really look at the theory of law. So I focused a lot on what is Oxford's teaching like compared to the other universities. So like the tutorial system, you have like the perfect opportunity to go into the details of the law, to ask all the questions you want, like from leading experts. So that was like the main thing that drove me and attracted me to Oxford.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Sorry, just jumping in there. I was eager to answer. For me, I think it was kind of something similar. So it was a kind of a lot of just thinking, where's the best place to do what I'm interested in, and so the answer for that was Oxford. And so kind of for me, it was a something I wanted to strive for, and this was kind of before where you could apply normally and then apply separately to the foundation year, which is it's different now, but I applied for regular undergrad, I got to interview, got rejected, and then found out about this, and I can say this wholeheartedly, I'd rather that I did this than I kind of went for full undergrad, but yeah, no, it was just kind of that striving for quote unquote the best, and for PPE. Oxford was founded here. I think it was 1904. I don't know why I have that number in my head, but it was founded here, and so you have those world-class teachers. You have that kind of amazing academic experience through the tutorial system, as Sab said, and then that kind of external recognition of what the institution brings about. But yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. To follow up with you, Sab, we've had a question specifically about law. The question is, in terms of studying law, would you say the foundation year is similar to a year then doing the undergraduate degree?
I wouldn't say they're similar in the sense that obviously on the foundation year, it's only a year-long program. So you're not going to cover the same amount of topics that you would on undergraduate. But I think what you do is very similar to the work that I would do on undergraduate. So I have kind of a similar set out. So I do about 2 essays a week, which is what I was doing at foundation year. I think the main difference was just foundation year, they kind of understood that maybe I can't read at the same level and at the same speed that an undergraduate would. So it was slightly reduced, but then there wasn't a massive difference. It was very similar work, just different structures of how the courses were structured out. Naturally, that's going to happen because it's a 1-year course compared to a 3-year course.
Perfect. Thanks so much. That's really insightful. Cool. So we've had a few further questions through about studying at Oxford with extra needs in place. So as students asked, they've struggled with mental health issues throughout their GCSEs and A-levels. What support is available at Oxford to help students out who have welfare needs?
I know a few of the things. We're sure we could all probably pitch in a little bit, but I know that the university has a counselling service. There's also a nightline available. We have peer supporters in most colleges, which are sort of fellow students, and they're available for you to reach out to if you're having a hard time. Most colleges also have a welfare team of their own as well. So there are some of the things that I know are in place for sure. Don't know if anyone wants to add anything to that.
So I think part of the so building the Astrophoria Foundation Year now is about thinking about having a welfare role within the Astrophoria team, but that again would probably be more signposting people to other places rather than actually doing the sort of counselling type thing. So that provision is there, and because you also have the college system, you've kind of got that slightly smaller environment that you're in, and you get some support there. I think some people think that because Oxford has this tutorial system that there's going to be a lot of sort of very personal welfare support around that as well. You have to remember that those two things are slightly separate. So the tutorial system is all about the academic and not necessarily about giving some of that extra support. And so the reason I say that is that I know sometimes students say, well, actually Oxford's going to be the best place for me to go to because there'll be all of this tutorial support, but it's just remembering that although there is some pastoral aspect to that, much more of that comes from the welfare teams and the central provision. So just having that in mind.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of add, I think from a student's perspective as well, there's as kind of Tom's mentioned, there are the different places to get help. And I think in comparison to school, from my experience, at least the way my secondary school was, there was basically nothing, so for me, I found A-levels quite tough as well. In that specific area, and so there wasn't any real support kind of from the academic institution itself, and then so coming to Oxford, as previously mentioned, you have a welfare team, junior deans and things like this, who an aspect of that is that kind of pastoral care. So there's loads of different people to speak to. Of course difficulties still arise and things are still difficult, but from my experience, there's a lot more support that you can get here than I could previously. But yeah.
Yeah, I'd really echo that. I forgot to mention myself, I'm an Oxford graduate. I graduated this summer. I spent 3 years there, and I regularly access welfare support in college and at the university level. It was very supportive and very thorough. So yeah, there's plenty of support available if you need to access that help. I think that was a really useful question and something important to consider. We've had a few questions about the interview process, asking kind of whether the interview process is the same as the regular admissions process. I don't know if maybe the staff would want to touch on that, maybe the students too.
I mean, I can touch on it first, and then the students can tell you a bit about their experience. Obviously, theirs was for the LMH one, so
yes, of course.
So remembering that Oxford is looking for people with sort of a real, I don't necessarily want to use the word passion for their subject, but we're looking for people who really want to talk about their subject and investigate their subject in more depth, and are interested in exploring it from different angles to you usually would. And so while I know lots of people get really worried about Oxford interviews, the point of the Oxford interview is to try and see, how you will work with that. So are you able to talk about your subject? Are you, if a tutor gives you some problems to think about, can you work through them? And so the foundation year interview will have that same basis in terms of, we will be interested in seeing what it is that you are interested in your subject and how you would like to explore it, but doing it at bearing in mind that this is for foundation year students. And so thinking a little bit more about you as a person, and exploring a bit about you and your educational journey and your approach to learning and things. So it looks at that side as well as then thinking about the academic side. We can look at the students and see whether they would agree with how they felt.
I think I would literally echo exactly what Jo said. My foundation year interview, the only real difference between my actual undergrad was that my foundation year interview, I had one. It was a little bit longer, and I think it was kind of split up into 2 sections. So I had Jo asking me like, why did you do this? And I was like, oh, I really wanted to learn more about law. And then I was given an actual academic piece, and I had to talk about it. And my undergraduate didn't have that first half. I think they probably just focused on my personal statement to see where I'd gone outside of my A-levels to learn about law. And they focused purely on the academics. But other than that, there really wasn't a big difference.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing really. Was very similar, and I guess I can give some more insight into what an interview looks like. So we do have that kind of split on foundation year where there's a kind of that personal section, and that kind of the main section is just figuring out how you think. So it's about working, the tutor seeing how your brain works, how do you approach a problem, and I can tell you from economics, it's not necessarily about getting the right answer. It's about working towards it, figuring out, and also, can you adapt to new information? When the tutor prompts you, are you just going to stay really kind of stern in your answer, or are you going to adapt to the new information that's been given? So it's to test your mind, rather than kind of have you had a lifetime of experience in this field, which you haven't. No one has. Yeah, that's what the interview looks like.
Thanks, both of you. Yeah, I'd echo that myself from my own experience from interviews. It's more about how you think than what you know. I got many a question wrong in my interview, and I felt like I embarrassed myself, but it was more about how I was thinking rather than what I was thinking. Cool. We've had a few technical questions around the extra personal circumstances that might be considered when you make your application. So I know in the additional application questionnaire, so we've had questions about whether schools' characteristics, so for example, pass rates, its location, postcode, and how far GCSEs are considered when making applications. Would you be able to kind of touch on what the kind of personal circumstances and the socioeconomic circumstances are that are taken into consideration?
Yeah, so I mean, I suppose the difference, and one of the reasons why we're using the additional application questionnaire, that fantastically named thing, is that actually those individual circumstances are much more individual. So some of the things like school characteristics are, that they're broad and obviously count the whole school, whereas we want to know about what things have happened to you and that have impacted on your education. So I think when you look on our website, you'll see that we have 3 different categories where you have to meet one from each of those categories. And the first one is a kind of a socioeconomic one, where there are a couple of postcode related indicators which are to do with, that's how the sort of statistical government way of looking at the country and thinking about how what the socioeconomic information is across the country. So we've got some of those. We also have in that category 1, have you been eligible for free school meals over the past 6 years? So that one would be specific to you. And I know we've had some questions about the fact that one comes up again in category 3, and that's okay. I mean, that's the point, is that you could have that in both of them. Our category 2 is a bit of a school criterion, because we had to have a school criterion in, and that's thinking about the percentage of people in your school who have been eligible for free school meals. So that is the one that you have to meet there. That's the school criterion. And then the final category 3 is where there is there's essentially a list at the moment of different individual level circumstances that we have thought about that maybe someone would have experienced that would have impacted on their education. And so that, again, just to think about the fact that those are specific to an individual rather than being area level or school level. And so essentially under that category 3, you would need to be able to meet one of them. And I think we've also said somewhere, Tom, I'll check with Tom, that if there's something that wasn't included there that you think has really impacted on your education, then you should get in touch with us as well, because it's not necessarily an exhaustive list. It was just the things that we could think of. Does that help clarify that?
Yeah, and then there's just one more thing to add, is that there's that route, and then there's an alternative route that if you're care experienced and you've studied at UK state schools, then you're automatically eligible. So there's sort of the longer route, which Joe talked about, and there's also that second route, which is a bit more succinct.
Thanks. Just to follow up on that quickly, we've had a couple of questions specifically about how far you take into account GCSE grades. I know this is a common question. Would you be able to touch on that?
Yes, I mean, at the moment, it is the A-level predicted grades. I mean, I guess if you think about it, we've said that we want people who have academic potential. So I would be lying if I said no one was ever going to look at A-level GCSE grades, but it's not a kind of, oh, well, if you haven't got a suite of 7s. I mean, we just would like to have a look at what the GCSE grades look like, but it's not necessary that, oh, that would count you out or that would count you in. I do think that there possibly for PPE was the idea that you might have to have a 6 in maths. So I think that would be my one where please check on the academic requirements. But other than that, not a specific set of grades required at GCSE.
Okie dokie. Thanks very much. I want to circle back to Sabio and Razai. It would be good to hear from you a little bit more about your experience doing a foundation year. Would one of you be happy to perhaps go over what a day in your life might have looked like, or what were the kind of specific things that you would have gotten up to in a typical day as a foundation year student?
I guess I'll leave that to Sab, seeing as that she was on the FY more recently. But yeah.
I was literally going to say, I feel like Rasa should go first, but I'll take it. It has been a little bit of time since I've done it 2 years ago. So a typical day as a foundation year doing law, so law as a whole, undergraduate and foundation year, had very few contact hours. Most of the times that you interact with the tutors is when you have a tutorial, and that was kind of the same in foundation year. So I had my weekly reading list per topic. I done the same, obviously, similar to what I done undergraduate. So say I was doing criminal law and I was doing English legal system. I had a reading list per topic per week. So one day I might spend focusing on doing half of that reading list, and maybe I'd have one session that day, which would be something like communication skills, study skills. So that was like the second half of the foundation year. So my first half was focused on law, so subject specific, and the second half was kind of just preparing me for undergraduate. So I kind of had like a 50-50. Half of it spent studying law, doing my reading, writing my essay, and I done that very independently just because of the way that law is. And then the other half I would spend maybe with the study skills tutor, or at the time when I done communication skills, we sat with the principal in the back of his garden and spoke about really random things. It always ended up being politics. So I had maybe an hour or two of that, but not really every day. It's been a while, I'm sorry. It's been a hot minute. But again, most of it was just independent work and then doing my essay and communication skills as a summary.
Perfect. Thanks. That's a really great insight. And just to touch a little bit more, I suppose, on your life at Oxford, I know my favourite place to work in Oxford was the Rose Cafe on the High Street. Love that place, and I miss it. Do you guys have a favourite place to work in Oxford? Anywhere in particular?
Yeah, my favourite place to work currently is the social sciences library. Oxford has like 20 different libraries, and then every college has its own library, so there's plenty of places to study. But my favorite place to study currently is the social sciences library. They've got little study carrels, and so you can kind of just close the door behind you, and then you're away from everything, like away from your your bed and everything that would tempt you if you were in your own room, and then just complete silence, which is lovely. But my favorite library is the Western Library, because that's just a really cool library. Really, really cool. They've got like old films as well, then you can watch them. It's cool. Yeah.
I'm going to be cheeky because I have two. My current favorite is the law faculty, purely for the sake of that. When I remember coming, when I was an A-level student, I would see the law faculty. I'm like, wow, this is so cool. So now I force myself to go because I'm like, you made it. Like, you're here. Like, let's study here. But I do end up going into the seminar room and just talking with my friends. So my actual favorite place to study is the Radcliffe camera, just because I think it's peer pressure at its finest. Like, everyone sat there with their laptops doing work, and you're like, wow, I really need to do my work. Like, I shouldn't go on my phone. So that's why it's my favorite. I don't think it's very healthy, but.
Cool. To follow up on that in terms of workload and managing your workload, I think there's a lot of rumour and discussion about Oxford workload and how much work it is, and it's really boring. You don't have any time to spend with your friends. During your foundation year, did you have time to kind of join societies, manage that workload, make sure that you were taking enough rest?
It is tough, but the short answer is yes. There was plenty of different things that I managed to take advantage of in my foundation year. Just kind of different events, loads of different talks, kind of like debates. There's Oxford Uni in here, and they get crazy speakers to come. And so I've spoken to loads of random people. They got like the first female prime minister of New Zealand in, and she was incredible. Loads of different people, like people I disagree with, people I love. But yeah, that's just one thing. But yeah, in short, the answer is yeah. You can still do sports, you can still do extracurriculars, you can still go to the club if that's what you like, and still read books, whatever it is. You do have time. But I think for me that there is definitely this difference, especially when I spoke to my friends and how much they were doing when I was in my foundation year. There is a discrepancy between other universities and Oxford. Oxford tends to have probably the highest workload you could have, but it's still not too much that you have no time and you're kind of in your books 24/7.
I think for me, because I was the COVID year, it is a little bit different. I'd like to start off with saying that I definitely did have time to socialize. But my biggest thing that I say at every single talk, and Joe probably hates me for it, is that I did find foundation year a lot. I think it was worth it because it now means that I can do my undergraduate and I understand what it means to have a lot of work. But in all honesty, it was tough. It was a big jump. I didn't get to even sit my A levels. So now going from that, being stuck in the house, and now with my criminal law tutor who's like top in his field, was quite scary, and it was a lot to manage. But at the same time, like I lived with Rasai in my foundation year, and our household was incredibly close. So we always found time to sit down, like have tea, because that's the only thing we could do at that time. But it wasn't like the worst thing in the world. I literally, if everything was open, I think it would have been a lot easier and I would have been able to manage it better. But for what I had, it was fun and I enjoyed it, and the workload was worth it.
Great. Thanks so much. I'd agree. I think the Oxford workload is worth it. Cool. There's a few technical questions just to circle back to those. Firstly, we were asked a while ago and more recently too, was there a specific like pass rate? You were saying how to get into the undergraduate degree, there's a specific pass rate. Is that like a kind of universal pass rate, or does that depend on the stream that you're on?
Right, a pass grade. Yeah, so it is. I think it's now advertised. So there's a pass grade for getting your Cert HE, which would be 40, and then the pass for progression to Oxford would be 60.
At least roughly.
Yeah, I was going to say roughly that. I was just yeah.
Okay, great. And in terms of when you apply for one particular stream, so we've had somebody ask, they're unsure whether to go for the PPE course or the humanities course with history involved. Is there opportunity to kind of touch other subjects while you're on the foundation year? They've asked about kind of, can you switch courses, or what can you do with the foundation year course afterwards, for example?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And at the moment, it wouldn't be massively easy to switch between PPE and humanities, that I'm going to be honest. I think that, in the same way that if you started in undergraduate and you were doing one subject and then decided actually you wanted to do another subject, it wouldn't be impossible. And there is a process by which it could happen, but it won't be easy, so you would be doing your humanities course, for example, aiming towards history. I think there would be opportunity for you to go to other lectures, and so it's not that you then would only be doing history and you couldn't possibly experience anything else. And if you did want to experience some politics, etc., I think that's there's that possibility. But you couldn't then say, oh, well, actually, come the end of the foundation year, could I possibly do PPE? Because again, remembering that you've been I guess we've got numbers, and there's a particular number of people who we would have taken on to do humanities. But then, yeah, like good to go, circle back around to what I said earlier. If you then absolutely wanted to do PPE and felt you could convince your tutors and kind of go through that process, then you could. It's not absolutely impossible.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of when we take personal circumstances into account, somebody's asked about whether they should include the personal circumstances that affect them kind of pre-doing their GCSEs. So one particular circumstance that kind of was less of an issue, it appears perhaps it wasn't so much of an issue during GCSE and A-level time, but was kind of more of an issue before that. Is that something that you'd still allow to go on the form, for example?
Yeah, I think that there would be a space to say why you think something has impacted on your education. And so again, yeah, I can't say very specifically. I think that the one thing to bear in mind is that we don't, in terms of when you're talking about circumstances that have impacted on you, we're not expecting you to write sort of really, really personal details about possibly not nice things that have happened to you, etc. So don't feel that if you haven't been able to write about something like that, then no one's, there's no sort of hierarchy of that where we're going, oh, that's what happened. But it's just thinking about, well, can you explain how your education has been impacted by events that have happened?
I think that's really useful and solid advice. We've had a really busy live chat today. It's been really lovely to see all these questions coming in, and I'm conscious that we're running out of time really, but I have one final question to ask the students. At Inside Uni, we want our information to be as relatable as possible, and we want students from backgrounds who perhaps you wouldn't typically apply for Oxford, you might think it's not for you, to apply. We really want that, and I certainly felt that when I was applying. Somebody's asked how students cope with the Oxford bubble, or perhaps the cultural shift that people experience when they go to Oxford. It can be a very different environment. Something that I experienced myself. I don't know if Sabia or Raza, you'd want to perhaps comment on your experience with that and how you've managed and how you've coped.
Yeah, I think me and Rafa both have quite similar experiences. I really do agree. In Oxford, actually, I found out recently that British, Pakistanis and Bengalis are some of the least represented in the university. So coming here, coming from, quite a diverse background, not just having Pakistanis and Bengalis around me, but so many different ethnicities, and people from like non-selective state schools was so crazy. I didn't even understand private school. I didn't understand like how other people lived. I thought we all lived the same life. So it was a really big shock, but there are so many other people like you, and there's so many other people that have got similar experiences that have now achieved, getting a place in Oxford, and they understand. So I spent a lot of my time just getting to know the other foundation years, because they're going through the same thing as me. I had another girl doing law with me, and she had a similar background, which was really, really nice. And I felt constantly supported by everyone in foundation year. And then outside of the college, I had like the Oxford Pakistan Society. This year, I spent a lot of time with the ACS. There's so many societies that will just take you in and understand that, we're kind of all in this together, and that we can make a place for us at Oxford. So it's not as hard as it seems, but it is scary, and you feel it every day, but then you feel the good stuff and the support, which is really nice.
I think that was so eloquently said. I don't know what I can add. Genuinely, it is definitely a shock. And as Sab said, it was something that kind of a lot of us experience. I think a big part of the foundation year is aspects of disadvantage, and so coming to a place where that's very rare, and coming to a place where advantage is the norm, it is a unique experience, and kind of people's understandings of the world, kind of understandings of what money means, understandings of what difficulty looks like. Some of the complaints I've heard about, my grandma had to sacrifice part of her pension to let me go to XYZ school, which is genuinely a line someone has said to me. And it's just, aspects of difficulty which don't look the same. And kind of having to, move away from home, and those kind of difficulties disappear into the background. And for me, that was difficult to contend with that, this feeling of like, wow, like I've made it out of the circumstances that I was in, but a lot of people haven't. And I think that was something for me that was a difficult weight to kind of bear. And kind of over time, I've, managed to get over it, or to come to terms with it, perhaps. But yeah, no, I think as Sab said, it does get better. You find your people, you find your footing, you find your confidence here, and it's, although disadvantages isn't common, there are people with that same lived experience. And I think one of the joys of coming to university, and especially moving out for university, is that you meet different people. I came with a mindset, I don't want any friends from private school, and now some of my friends did go to private school. And you kind of adapt to this new circumstance and learn as well about their lived experience and how they view the world. So I think it's a beautiful thing, that difference, but that difference is quite odd. So it does take a moment to get used to. But again, it's worth it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's a really powerful thing to end on, because we've run out of time. So there's still questions coming through, and I'm sure that lots of people have lots of things to ask. Joe and Tom, is there a particular place that you would direct anybody to ask those questions? We can put those links, those emails, those contact details in the chat right now.
Yeah. So the best email is foundationyear@admin.ox.ac.uk. So sending queries through to there, that's a good start. a lot of information that we have covered and a lot of information that we haven't covered is actually available online as well. And we have a full eligibility guide as well. So, and that's found on the web page. So if you Google Astrophoria Foundation Year, you'll find it. So possibly you might find the answer to your questions there without having to ask us, but we are happy to help as well.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Hopefully those links will have gone through to the chat. So yeah, do go to the web pages to find those extra details. Perfect. Thanks so much for everybody's time. In terms of what you guys can do next, we have plenty of content and information going out on our social media every day. So do give us a follow on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, the like. Sorry, cheeky plug there. And from me, it's just a big thank you to Joe, Tom, Sab and Razai. Yeah, thank you so much for your time. It's been a really insightful Q&A session and hopefully really helpful to lots of prospective applicants.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So I'll ask Tommy on the tech to end the live there. So thanks very much. Just say bye-bye.
See ya.